Welcome to the Void Wars, my friends. This is DisThunder from the Foosh. Today we're going to take a look at the last of the MezCon 2023 exclusives, and that's the biggest one, the Cadet Gomez with Vortex Strike Suit Deluxe set. It took a little bit to get here. I mean, really maybe a few weeks later than we were expecting initially. And also it took me longer because I literally got the box the day I was leaving town, so I had to wait a week till I got back to really get into it. So here we are now. Here you are. And here's the strike suit, so we can talk about it. I'll do my best. Even though, honestly, this thing's so damn big, I had to kind of rethink how I was going to do a review for it. Might be a bit of an understatement to say that this strike suit is a bit of an escalation in the 112 collective. So far, we've had a couple of bikes, and we've had some good-sized figures, but this is 14 inches of battle suit. And if the Rumble Con was any indication, it's just the start. So for once, I'm kind of glad that we've got a little bit of time before we see the Rumbler all-terrain off-road vehicle, because I'm going to still need a few more months to wrap my head around this one completely. So perhaps the best way to start for this review then is to start small, and that means we can start with Cadet Gomez, and let's go over some of his accessories just even briefly. First up here, he has a respirator type mask that plugs into the life support system on his back as part of his chest armor. Got a little flexible hose that goes in there, and then the mask itself fits neatly onto his face. The torso armor also has a magnet in the back of it, so you can attach his jetpack to it. No pegs or finicking required. His trusty sidekick Boom Boom gets reimagined this time as well, now kind of like an 8-track device that clips onto his belt and powers his small lightsaber that lights up. Here's just a quick shot of it all compressed down and clipped onto his belt. He also has a classic sci-fi inspired blaster that holsters onto his belt that you can take on and off as you need to, and several blast effects to put it into work. And since I didn't include it first here, here's a shot of the jetpack in its proper place on his back. Feels a little Rocketeer, doesn't it? If you want to lean a little further into that 50s sci-fi spaceman attire, though, he also has a bubble helmet that comes apart in 3 pieces. You put the neck guard on and then just put 2 halves together, and there you have it. The old fishbowl space helmet's probably one of the most classic sci-fi tropes that there ever was, but I really like the way this looks on the figure. Although it's a little hard to photograph, especially in natural light, you can kind of see me in that helmet there in a couple shots. Now, as far as Cadet Gomez's articulation goes, I've reviewed Gomez, I think, probably half a dozen times in the last couple years, and other than some new boots that are actually very similar to the Power Ranger boots, this is all stuff you've seen before, and that includes the gloves and the hands, so variant hands are the same as you've seen previously. But that is not at all a bad thing, because the Cadet Gomez body is a Gomez body, and the Gomez bodies are great for a nice, slender character. His chest armor attaches via that little clasp right there. It's not too terrible to get on and off. Underneath he's got just the V on his jumpsuit, but obviously I much prefer the look of the vest on there. Gives him some texture and some depth. But yeah, double jointed elbows, double jointed knees, double ball jointed neck, 2 torso joints, 2 turntables and a microphone. You guys know what we're getting into here. This is just good standard Mezco Gomez fare. If you were wondering for customizing's sake, the belt tabs in behind the big pouch on his left hip, so you can remove it relatively easy, and then of course the holsters and Boom Boom just slide on that empty space on the rest of the belt. So it's pretty easy to take off, remove, customize, and configure to the way you need it. Like with articulation, I've done a scale comparison on Gomez almost every time I've reviewed the figure, so if you have one, you know his scale. But here's Supreme Knight Batman for continuity's sake. It's kind of funny because this is the only times that a Gomez exclusive is being upstaged by his accessories, but I think that's okay this time. Because not every time is a 14-inch articulated Vortex Strike Suit Battle Mech. And when we talk about scale, this is the kind of thing that I think we were all hoping for when Mattel did the Avatar figures, and then when McFarlane did more Avatar figures, and nobody gave us a mech that could hold a 6 or 7 inch figure. Well, Mezco did. For most of my video gaming life, I've been a huge fan of the different Assault Suit games like Assault Suit Lanos or Target Earth as we know it here, or Cybernator, or the various Votom and Gundam games we got like in the 2000s. But I think this has a more toy-related inspiration. I think this draws very spiritually from the Exo Squad line. Specifically, I think the proportions and the layout remind me a lot of the Phaeton E-frame, and it's not too hard to imagine this thing in these colors. Getting back to the task at hand here, let's go over some of the features here, like this little panel that opens up in the front that looks like a service hatch. But beneath that, we start getting into the weaponry. And why, yes, that is a crotch-mounted Gatling gun. It doesn't spin or anything, but it is kind of spring-loaded, so it pops out a bit from that panel. For more ranged attacks, there are rocket pods hidden underneath the shoulder pads on each side. These are likewise static, but they're nicely painted and it's obvious what they are, so that's pretty cool. But his main weapon has to be this giant butter knife size lightsaber with an LED embedded in the hilt. Seriously, this thing is massive enough you could use it as a weapon yourself. There's also some nozzles in the palms of the mech hands that kind of look like flamethrower nozzles. I'll show you those when I do the articulation. I'd be lying if I said I didn't wish he came with a giant space cannon of some kind, but I mean, it's a pretty good loadout. You likely noticed the highly detailed canopy with the seat and that nice little readout section in the front that has a little backlit LED so it looks like it's an illuminated LED display. Now, the canopy has another little clever embedded feature that I like, and that is the harness that holds the figure in place is actually a part of the canopy lid. So as you bring the canopy lid down, that secures Gomez in place without having to do any weird straps or anything. The LED light-up features, which also include these giant fuel canisters in the back, are all powered by a battery hatch and on-off switch that are hidden up there on top between the shoulder blades. Then you see there's a button like right below that panel that you can use to power the effects on without having to turn the switch. To do articulation, I literally had to bring it out to the kitchen table. First, the shoulders are on these big, heavy, detented ratchet joints. They're actually so strong they'll sometimes pop the canopy, so watch out for that. You have basically a bicep swivel and more or less a wrist swivel in there as well. And then on the hand, you see we've got articulated fingers and knuckles. There's that nozzle I was talking about. And a little bit of pivot for the thumb. All the joints are super tight. Those detents are intense. For the hips, you have a little bit of in and out range on the end of that post, and then a big old heavy ratchet joint for the hip joint itself. There's also detents on the double jointed knee. As you can see here, it's actually got a pretty good range of depth on it. And then there are toe and heel spur articulation as well as a little bit of ankle pivot to get a little more fine tuning in the standing poses. It has surprisingly good balance for as heavy as it is as well. Here's a little more detail on that knee. There's actually a little telescoping piece that kind of hides the joint when it's standing free. There's that toe joint again and a little bit of heel spur action. All in all, the more I played with it, the more at ease I felt with this is a quality piece and the articulation is solid. Like I said at the beginning of the video, this is actually a difficult review for me to kind of wrap my head around. It's just kind of crazy to be staring at this thing on my table or on my desk or wherever I have room for it. It really does feel like somebody took my imagination's eye view of those 118 Exo Squad figures from 30 years ago and blew it up in, 1080p. As far as getting one for your own collection, if you haven't already, yeah, it's going to be a waitlist item, and of course you can find that waitlist at mezcotoys.com. Still, I would absolutely throw my name in that hat if I didn't have one already. And despite being a pretty expensive piece, I'm not going to dance around that. The truth is, this thing has a lot of potential as far as repaints and retools and redecos go. I mean, you can imagine the amount of willpower it's taking me not to put a Batman logo and deco on this thing. I just can't bring myself to do it. The factory paint's too good. But I would absolutely buy one if somebody were so inclined to make one in mass production. But I feel like, yeah, I'd like a Death Squad's variant, or maybe a Hazard Squad variant in yellow. Stuff like that would be really cool to see what they could do with it. But as for now, at least, it looks like it's a one and done, but holy shit, what a well done it is. So for now, I'm going to stop it here and say thank you very much to Mezco Toys, and thank you very much to you guys, and hopefully this isn't the last we've seen of the Vortex Strike Suit.